times working on it. Okay, we're up. Okay, welcome once again to the Cow Report, and I'm your host Chuck Lee, and we've got a beautiful evening down here at the L.E. Phillips Public Library, and we are coming to you live. And with me tonight is Donald Brill. I want to welcome you to the show, Donald.
Thank you.
You'd like to be called Don, though, don't you?
Fine.
And Don is running for Congress from the 3rd Congressional District, and I understand, Don, that that's a large district.
It goes all the way from Frederick to the Illinois border.
Now, Frederick, on the north?
Yeah, that's up in Pierce County. We have 17 counties overall.
And like I say, it is a big district. And how long does it take to travel from one end to the other? Have you figured out?
It's a daunting task. I don't have any of the dimensions in terms of time.
Well, you know, you think about some of these districts out in Utah and Idaho where there might only be one congressman or 2 congressmen for the whole state. Montana, them are big states to travel through.
It takes a lot of help. It's a grassroots campaign, and a lot of people have to pitch in. And
you can see why something like 90% of the incumbents stay in year after year.
Yeah.
With the franking privileges and all the perks that they get.
Once they get the organization set up, it's on a roll.
It's amazing that any of them, you have to wait for them almost to retire.
Despite term limit promises.
Okay, tonight we're going to be talking to Don about exactly why he would want to get involved in a major undertaking like this, which it is. And we're talking a good 6 months, close to 6 months from now till November. And see, May, June, July, August, over 4 months till the primary. So you've got your work cut out for you, and exactly. First of all, Don, we're going to have you tell the viewers a little bit about your background.
Well, first I might say, Chuck, that I had visions of doing a little fishing this summer, and maybe a little gardening. And of course, with this project, why, those go out the window. So it looks like a busy summer. I was actually born on a farm only 12 miles from here, rural Oak Mound, and had my early training there. Strong family. And we were victims of the Depression in a number of ways. My dad was into purebred Guernseys. He was just getting national recognition on his herd when the 29 crash came, and suddenly his foundation stock was worth $25 on the block, just like any grade stock. So that introduced me to the field of economics in a very real way. I grew up and graduated from high school, and I went to Stout. Actually, there were very few jobs available at that time, and Stout was close by, and they amazingly admitted me, and away we went. Well, the third year, I was drafted out into the infantry in World War II, and spent 3 years in Europe. Well, part of the 3 years was on this side, in training and so forth, and breaking trail for Patton's Armored across Europe. And coming out of that, I enjoyed the GI Bill. That was my introduction to the voucher system. And that was very, very helpful in helping a lot of fellows complete their education.
Were you part of D-Day and all that?
No, I came.
You were already over there, huh?
No, actually they sent me to college for a while, the Army Specialized Training Program. And then they decided they didn't need engineers that bad and folded the program, and everybody went into the infantry in places of hazard. Some had given up ranks as high as tech sergeant, nice appointments in the Air Force, and rear echelon troops. So they gave up a lot more than I did because I came into the infantry initially.
So after the war, then, how did you? What did you end up as far as your education and your employment? What did you end up doing?
I finished my degree at Stout and decided I wanted to go into the industry, which I did. I went with National Presto Industries for a while until they had contract problems, and I wound up in the month of July reclaiming scrap aluminum in an open-fired furnace. And I decided maybe teaching wasn't quite so bad. So I went to Minnesota, took my master's, tooled up for teaching, and went into the career.
And you ended up going to Madison, to UW, and getting your PhD, and what was that in?
Well, that was in curriculum and instruction. I started out teaching in Minneapolis, then I came to Eau Claire Public Schools, took a job over at Technical College, which is the vocational school at that time, and was there for 6 years, and then I took an administrative post with the state board. And the last 13 years that I was there, from 1970 to 83, I was assistant state director. And during that time, the PhD seemed to be important, so I gradually worked that off. The university was handy, and so I completed the PhD, and that, of course, gave me a good credential for moving up in administration.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now, you also, as far as holding office, you were on the local Eau Claire School Board. Now, what years were you on that?
Oh, time and memory fade, Chuck. Let's see, I think I was 89 to 92. Does that sound about right?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe 88 to 91.
All right.
In that vicinity. I took one term.
So you got a taste though of a big budget, several.
Oh yeah.
Probably over $50 million.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Each year.
Very much so.
So you had a chance to try and balance a big budget.
Well, in my humble way, I did have a number of ideas that I think are workable, which I still believe in. Mm-hmm. And if elected, I will continue to pursue.
Okay.
And one is the idea of program budgeting. Right now, with fund accounting, we don't always know exactly what the different budgets are. With the computer capabilities, program budgeting is certainly feasible, and I think it's taking place gradually here as well as elsewhere. And one thing it could do is parcel out the programs so you know which are education in the traditional sense, like transmission of culture, and which are socially oriented or welfare type programs. And I think you'll find that the schools are doing an awful lot of their work in that area, which are not really on task in terms of the educational function. Yeah. And if we have them parceled out with program budgeting, then the taxpayer can tell what he's really paying for in terms of education. Now, I wasn't in favor of the tax shift that they recently accomplished, because I think they should have first parceled out the education from the welfare and shifted the welfare component to the state and the appropriate agency, and that would have left us with a better look at what the educational costs are.
Okay, education is a big issue, and we have a national Department of Education that doesn't do much educating, but it has a massive budget. And I know that there's talk of a national school board, or similarity to that coming down the line. But in terms of the whole United States government, which is at least $4 trillion in debt, overall, what are you going to try and do to, if and when elected, or when and if and when elected, what are you going to do to get the budget down and get a balanced budget?
The only way to do that is cut government. We're just paying for so much bureaucracy and so much redundancy and so much, I hate to use the word fraud, but I'm sure it's in there. Some agencies probably are not even needed in our ethic, and we simply have to delegate some of those functions back to the state where they belong and back to the local I'm a local control person, and I object to government taking over more and more and more, and building more and more dependency, because only by teaching ourselves to be self-disciplining and responsible and independent will we be able to keep our system that we enjoyed.
Well, I want to remind the viewers that at 9:15 we will start taking calls, and the number will come up on the screen at that time. And we'd ask that you keep your questions brief. Now, this is live, so you can ask Don. You are in the 3rd District, most of you that are watching this, and there are a few of you on the north end of the cable viewing area that are in David Obey's district, but the vast majority of you are in the 3rd Congressional District, which is held now by Representative Gunderson, and he's held it for close to 14 years.
Yeah.
Or going on 14 years. Now, why, Don, do you think that this is the time to run against Steve Gunderson?
Well, I have a thing about traditional American values, and the Republican Party has been the conservative voice. And if we lose the conservative voice, we don't have Republicans. And I'm very distressed with the shift to the left of the party and its leadership. And you didn't come forward, Chuck, so what was I going to do? I thought somebody has to do something. And it's my privilege to do it. And my intention is to speak about family and traditional American and Republican values and keep that conservative voice out there. If we shouldn't have to look like Democrats to get votes. And one thing I observe is that a lot of Democrats are sounding like Republicans, pandering to votes. And you and I know that's not sincere. And I want honest-to-goodness Republicans to speak out and maintain the traditions which make them Republicans, not to fade off into some other philosophy.
Now, is the 3rd District, is it as liberal as some would have us believe?
Oh, no. I'm getting very positive feedback. There's a lot of frustration out there with the way things are going nationally and within our local politics. And it's reassuring to what I see and what I'm trying to do.
Now, there's more than just Eau Claire, Menominee, and La Crosse. There's a lot of small hamlets.
17 counties, Chuck.
A lot of small little towns.
Oh,
between 100 and 1,000 people.
Well, they're somewhere around 300, I think.
300
towns.
little towns and hamlets.
Well,
and
some not so little.
villages. And,
yeah.
But that's a lot to get through in
It is.
4 months. But
And the only way we can do it is get an organization going, excuse me, where we'll have a lot of people picking up the challenge in county committees and local committees and take off and do the job.
well,
They have to want to do it.
you're from a farming background, and well, there's not as many farmers now in the 3rd District as there was 10, 15, 20 years
We're
ago.
down to 2% of the population.
But it still is a great farming tradition in the 3rd District. And as a matter of fact, I think your milk prices are based on what it takes to haul them to Eau Claire. I think that was set up a long time ago, but Eau Claire has something to do with how milk prices are set for the whole United States.
If we didn't have to ship it to Indianapolis before we put it in our local shelves, why, it might be better.
But what can you do to help the local farmers? There's a lot of farmers that are out there struggling, and there are a lot of issues.
We have to keep them in mind. We all need to eat. We forget that the farmers feed us. And we have to maintain that workforce and maintain the interest and the succession of farm. One thing I think of is urban sprawl is devastating to nearby farms. And we have to look at taxing on the basis of use rather than on potential. A development starts and they start reassessing in terms of the potential market value and wipe out a farm. We can't keep doing that.
So you're proactive for the small farmer,
You bet.
keep them in business.
Keep the family farm. It's a way of life. Nothing against the large farmer. They have to develop some size in order to keep that profit margin, but we can't neglect the folks that aren't quite so big and are keeping the whole operation going.
Now, another thing that's of interest in Wisconsin, and we're not that far from Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Milwaukee's not too far away. And you hear once in a while rumblings of gangs starting in Eau Claire, and they've had gang trouble in Wausau and Green Bay, and it kind of boils down to crime and to guns. And incidentally, this evening at midnight, John Wayne Gacy, is going to be injected with a lethal substance to end his life. 15 years ago, they found 33 boys in his crawl space and scattered around northern Illinois. And he's been languishing in the state prisons for over 14 years, waiting for his day with destiny. Well, tonight is finally that day. But now I understand that there is a very limited amount of the death penalty on the federal level, and I think they're going to be expanding that with this new crime bill. But where are you at as far as crime and controlling the gangs and getting guns off the street?
My first comment is that Mr. Casey's constitutional rights were violated. He was entitled to a speedy trial. That's a constitutional guarantee. 15 years is ridiculous. I think the problem of crime comes from our loss of moral responsibility and self-discipline. And that marks the eroding foundations of our very culture. And no amount of weapons control, no amount of gun control, whatever, will address the basic problem. And we won't get any solution until we begin to address the basic problem. And that has to do with family, moral responsibility, values development. And it's a long road because we've had a couple of generations that we haven't given proper attention to that.
Okay. Well, we have the phone number up on the screen now. It's 839-5067 for those who'd like to call in and ask Mr. Brill a question about any issues. Or you have a whole number of issues that you're going to be dealing with over the next several months.
While we're waiting for the call, let's just touch that crime issue again.
All right.
It occurs to me that the most violent, most civilian violence that we've experienced, for example, Sterling Hall in Madison, the World Trade Center in New York, and then throw in the barracks in Lebanon, they were done in with agriculture, fertilizer, and fuel oil. Not a gun was used in the whole business, yet that was the most violent crime that we've witnessed. So you don't need guns for violence at all.
Okay, now you are running as a Republican.
Right.
And on the Democratic side, I think there are 4 candidates running. So
right.
There will be a spirited debate here in September, what is it, September 8th is the primary?
I suspect there will
Pretty
be
close to that date. I don't
some
know.
spirited debates.
Now, so with 6 of you running and possibly more still getting in, could be. I think there are some independent candidates running. What's going to kind of separate you from the pack there?
Values.
Values?
Values. Foundational values. I'm distressed by the fact that historians have purged from our curricula the foundations of our country, and that's where our moral responsibility went. We're not teaching it.
All right. Now, another issue that, first of all, I wanted to touch once more on the Republican Party. Now, there's like you were saying earlier, there's a move amongst some individuals in the party to push it to the left,
right.
or to make it liberal.
Right.
Now, that was kind of, the liberals kind of went in and co-opted the Democratic Party about 15, 20 years ago, and they pretty much control that now. So are we going to have 2 Democratic parties, or are we going to have a Republican party and a Democratic party?
It's shaping up for two liberal parties if we don't do something to hold the balance. That's what it's all about.
No. They talk about a big tent theory, and everybody comes in the tent, but Are you going to be able to keep everybody underneath that tent?
I love the big tent idea, and anybody of any ethnic origin or any religious persuasion that has a good set of moral responsibilities, believes in our traditions and our foundations, I welcome their vote.
All right. Okay, now you're married. We should recognize that. And how long you been married, and who's your wife?
Oh, you're going to embarrass me now if I try to remember how many years that is. It's quite a few years, Chuck. Yeah, my wife, Meredith, was the former Meredith Wright, a prominent early pioneer family in the area. And I have 4 great kids, all adults. 2 are married, and 2 are still pursuing their careers independently. I have 3 grandchildren by birth, 2 step-grandchildren, and 1 Amerasian grandchild. Becky brought this young girl from Thailand. She had been in Thailand for 2 years and was able to bring Suan back, and Suan is making great progress.
All right. Okay. Well, I heard a couple of phone calls in there, but then it kind of went dead. So you ladies and gentlemen out there can just jump in anytime you want there and call up. Don, I know you were on Wisconsin Public Radio a few weeks back, and you had all kinds of calls.
I don't really know what happened. I haven't heard the tape.
Oh, well, I listened to it.
I knew what I said, but I didn't know what happened.
Well, I guess we did have calls on already, and I just found out now. So we'll see. We'll check the lines here and see.
Good enough.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, you guys. Thanks a month.
Okay. That there was a wrong number.
Oh, I see.
All right. We dealt a little bit with crime, and it says you favor stiff penalties for violent crime. So what do you mean by stiff?
I think for heinous, violent crimes, they should pay with their life.
On the federal level.
Crime deterrence has been argued around and is inconclusive, but one thing is sure, if you remove the criminal, that's ultimate deterrent.
So that at least that individual criminal doesn't commit more of the same type of crimes.
You eat an elephant a bite at a time.
Okay, we're going to try and take a call again. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hello, Don. I've been watching your program here. Could you explain what you mean about values, family values? Could you be more specific about that?
Well, you look at our foundations, our founding fathers. They had a strong ethical position, and it came out of the Judeo-Christian ethic. And that's a moral base that a lot of countries have used successfully. And countries that have not used that have been less successful. And that's one proof of the pudding.
Do you have anything else to add, caller?
No, that'll be it.
Family.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Family solidarity is key. That's the foundation block. You cannot build a sound wall with rotten brick. We got to get back to sound family.
Well, you know, Hillary Clinton was talking about sound families yesterday, but she was talking about how the nucleus family is no longer there. It's almost just vanished. Something like 30% of the babies born are illegitimate.
Well, 33 overall, 80% in some populations. We're just breeding the underclass. We're building the underclass with a vengeance, and wonder where our social problems come, where our street people come from, where our welfare comes from. We're designing it. We're doing it on purpose.
Does it help to let in, I saw a brief video clip the other day that showed one spot on the Mexican border where 60,000 illegal aliens a month were crossing.
Yeah.
And Clinton hasn't turned off that faucet. Now, does that help to create this massive lower class?
We have some unsound very unsound policies, and we should do things decently and in order. But I'm looking at our own problems and the kind of jobs that are going unfilled, and it might be that we'll be dependent on immigration, illegal or otherwise, to fill the spots.
Well, we'll try and take another call here.
A lot of those people become very, very productive.
Okay, caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, enjoyed your program. I got a couple questions for Dr. Brill.
All right.
What kind of response have you been getting from people since you announced your candidacy?
Very encouraging response. There's a lot of frustration out there, and it's not uncommon to have someone say that they didn't have any idea of what they could do, lacking an alternative. And one thing I hope to be doing is provide people of this type an alternative, so they have a choice. There's been no challenge for many years.
Good. Second question is, didn't the Democrat Party experience this a few years back, and there was a takeover of that party? Now we see what's in control. They were underground for a while, but now we see what's in the White House. They're coming out of their closets. And would you say then that's exactly what's happening to the Republican Party, that the homosexuals and some of the liberals are trying to split the party and take over?
I prefer to generalize in terms of liberals, and it's all in a package. Certainly that's my conviction, that they have had a steady movement that I've followed personally for 40 to 50 years. And their ethic is, or their philosophy is known as humanism. And it's, a lot of people confuse it with humane and humanity and compassion. But they're being deceived because it's actually a philosophy that's anything but those. They go by the root words, and they're misled.
Glad you're out there. I think the leadership of the Republican Party is going to have to answer to the Republican members for not stepping forth and saying, hey, let's keep the party the way it has been and not allow it to go to the left. Even some of our local leaders here, that there's a certain group that has formed to try to kick out the so-called evangelical movement, the Catholics and the Lutherans. They want to kick them out and bring the party back to what they call a party, but I don't think they know what they're talking about, and I think they're going to have to answer to their community someday over that.
They were outvoted miserably at the county caucus.
Well, that speaks very loud then.
They are not the majority. They're a minority splinter group. My argument is that they have split the party, and that there won't be enough of it left for us to keep the seat unless we have a change.
I agree with you. Well, I think people are beginning to catch on, and I'm glad you're running because we have a choice in the matter.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for calling, caller. Well, you know, thinking about that, is the United States becoming Europeanized, where we're going to have a Labor Party and a Conservative Party, and they're kind of there'll be the Republican Democratic Party will kind of blur into one, or will we end up having one party like they do in Mexico?
I spent time in Europe during World War II, and I just don't want to get into those invidious comparisons, but I think we're headed the wrong direction, and it's time to turn around.
Okay, Don. I subscribe to Reuters news service, and this afternoon something came across about Clinton's new policy on Haiti triggers fears of immigrant flood. Now, I brought up immigration along the Mexican border, but we also have problems on the border nationwide. Canada, the West Coast, the East Coast. Florida has a tremendous problem. They have had since the 70s. As a matter of fact, the governor of both California and Florida are filing lawsuits against the United States government to help pay for this massive influx of immigrants.
It comes from unreal social policies. We've encouraged that sort of thing for wrong reasons. I have nothing against immigration. We come from immigrants ourselves. And as we lose our own productivity of what we might call native, we'll probably need those people to fill in the spots. And they do some of this very well. But At the same time, we can't afford these massive influxes that completely dislocate our economies. And it's nothing that intelligent policy won't handle.
Well, it's gotten so bad in California that in Los Angeles County alone, their best estimate or a guesstimate is 1 million illegal aliens in one county in the United States.
Yeah, and they're going after, I think, something like 9 million reparations.
And the
from the federal government.
California governor says his prisons are filling up with illegal aliens.
Right.
So they've got to build new prisons just to house the Americans.
We've had one policy bungle after another.
Well, let's try and take another call here. Let's see what we've got going. Whoop. Whoop. I guess we don't have anything going there right then. Okay. Don, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. And I'm trying to tell people what happened on this date in history. So you might want to...
yeah, right.
What is today, the 9th?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll pick a good one here for you. You probably remember this one because it happened in 1941. The Germans' master coding machine, Enigma, is captured by the Allies, allowing for the interception of secret messages. That happened on this date in 1941.
I didn't know about it at the time, but it might have saved our lives.
It was quite a machine. I've seen programs on that. Just a box, but it coded everything, so we couldn't tell what the Germans were doing.
Yeah.
But once we got a hold of that, we could tell where their submarines were and everything.
Remember, in those days we had a CIA too. It was before Jimmy Carter tore it down and threw it away, and got us into the intelligence problems we've had for the last 20 years.
Okay, I think we might have our phone lines cleared up here, and we'll try and take a call again. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air. Whoops. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hello, doctor. As an educated man, do you know what the Earth's primary renewable natural resource is?
Well, organic materials obviously are.
Right. Specifically, though.
What's this?
Specifically, though, a plant that could save the world?
A plant that could save the world.
Well, I suppose you could pick any one of a number of plants. I think we need the whole ecosystem. I don't think we can narrow it down to one.
Most definitely.
I think I know where you're going with this, caller. I think you've called up before, and I think you're talking about marijuana.
Right. And for food, fuel, and fiber, it is the Earth's primary renewable natural resource. And I just find it ridiculous that we're using up all of our natural resources that do take so long to create. And there is, an annual sort of plant that does not take 20 years to produce, the amount that, 1 acre, of hemp could take to equal 4 acres of trees.
Well, that brings up a good question, Don. Where are you at on this drug problem that we've had for 30 years now in this country?
Okay, do you label marijuana as a drug?
Marijuana,
well, it is by the government.
Marijuana is a hemp, cannabis, and it makes excellent rope. And they used to use that to good effect in handling crime. And maybe that's where we should go with it.
Making twine to tie the hands of criminals? Is that what you're saying?
Prefer the neck.
Gee, I think that sounds a little harsh. Perhaps for people who are addicted to the more harsh things and are destroying their own lives and the people around them. But I believe that marijuana is wonderful for loving your fellow man.
You're pressing me to discussions of the underclass, which I'd like to avoid. But if we look for soporifics and stupefactives, that denies our intelligence and our self-discipline and our creativity, and I'm not willing to surrender those.
Oh, okay. Well, perhaps that is symbolic of your generation.
Oh, doubtlessly.
Your political views.
Terrific generation, I tell you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Okay, Don, in the last week or two now, Germany legalized marijuana, and Colombia has. And in tonight's Lear Telegram, there's a 19-year-old kid here in town facing 9 years in prison
Uh-huh.
for $90 worth of marijuana.
Yeah.
Now, there has to be a line drawn somewhere between heroin and these softer recreational type drugs. And the pendulum keeps swinging back and forth. And as I said earlier, it's swung completely the other way in Europe, Germany, and in Colombia. So is there any way of segregating the recreational use of marijuana from say, heroin and crack cocaine and
There is, but
keeping teenagers out of prison and ruining their whole lives?
there is, but I don't want to discuss it on public television.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll just try and take another call. I think we already did discuss it.
We did discuss part of it.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hello, Dr. Brill. You said that you would like less big government control and more local and state control.
Right.
Are there many others in Congress who support this view, and can we really get less big government control? And how do you differ from Gunderson in your view?
You'll find some good congressmen on the Hill that agree with that, and I would expect to be able to join a coalition that would push in that direction. The economic and management type issues, we're not in great disagreement. Here and there we may disagree somewhat. Where our disagreement is in values. They refer to the economic issues as values. They are not values. Values are philosophical in nature, have to do with where we are in terms of who we are, and in terms of the family, and in terms of what we teach in school, what philosophies we subscribe to. These are the values that I'm concerned about. What we do with creativity, intelligence, self-discipline, and responsibility, moral responsibility, these are values. And you'll find the liberals do not want to discuss this. And this is where my great difference is with the liberal wing of the party.
Okay. Well, I am 34 years old, and so I'm in a different generation than you, but I appreciate very much the fact that you're running and that you are trying to bring back individual responsibility and morals. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for calling, caller. Okay, Don.
The only antidote to crime is self-discipline and moral responsibility. No amount of weapons control or controlling shoestrings or coat hangers or opposed thumbs will address the crime problem. It's within the heart. It's moral responsibility.
Okay, talking about moral responsibilities and Congress and the Republican Party, another thing that passed on the wire on my computer today comes from the new governor of New Jersey, Christine Todd Whitman. She's a Republican, and you know her campaign manager was accused of spreading walking around money through the black churches and stuff out there. But anyway, she was elected, and that all blew over because the Democrats all of a sudden realized that they do the same thing. They might call it something besides walking around money, but they spread the money around to get votes. Well, anyway, she's in office now, and just today, a delegation of gay leaders, led by the president of a local gay Republican club called the Log Cabin Republicans, met with her, and she says that this governor says that she told Evelyn Koch, K-O-T-C-H, the leader of the Philadelphia Log Cabin Club, that the governor said she would do everything in her power to make sure that the Republican Party is a party of inclusion. And then they go on to talk about Governor William Weld, who also is a Republican, how he has let numerous homosexuals into his cabinet. And this Koch says, I asked her to be a champion like Governor Weld has been. She told us that in her heart she is with us. Now, the homosexual issue has become a big issue, not only in the 3rd District, but nationwide. And same-sex marriages and you name it, special rights, some have won, some have lost. This thing's going to and fro, tossed back and forth. Where do you stand on this issue, and what's it look like in the future? Is that for an issue in the Republican Party?
I have no brief with people in their personal lives, their how they perceive their own lifestyle. But when it becomes evident, that becomes behavior, not just status. The distinction between behavior and status is phony. It can't exist. We all have anomalies. We're all different. We're all unique. We have genetic differences that show up. But our species has been endowed with intelligence and a capacity for self-discipline. And we're able to be the kind of person, pretty much, that we want to be. I think that whether it's genetic or not, I think is a ridiculous and useless discussion. Because we all have genetic differences, and it's so easy to confuse it with imprinting, bonding, and brainwashing. And if they really thought they couldn't help it, why are they promoting so hard? Mm-hmm. And if it is genetic, then evolution theory and logic, as any farmer knows, the gene would die out because it has to do with procreation, and that's the end of the line. Mm. And even though you find it in the general population, that would gradually diminish. We think of genetic engineering as something that we just caught on to. Not so. It's as old as the human race and animal husbandry. Mm-hmm. It takes longer through breeding than it does through splicing. But that's genetic engineering. And look, from 1 or 2 wild dogs, we've got 1,000 different pedigrees. The question is, how long does it take to breed true? And so the genetic argument doesn't hold.
Well, everybody in the United States is supposed to have equal rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
So when you start segregating out small groups and giving them special rights, that's exactly what they are, special rights.
It doesn't work. And
because
not only
you
that,
discriminate against the rest of society when you do that.
The nature of homosexuality is that it erodes family, one of the very values that I'm concerned about. It confuses parenthood. It provides a role model that also is counter to sound family development. And as you say, it breeds special interest that's invidious to our whole democratic concept.
Well, we've got some callers eagerly awaiting to talk to you, so we better get to them.
I'll bet that's right.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, I got a question for you on what's your views on welfare reform?
Oh, that's another goodie, isn't it?
Oh, I love that one. That's my personal favorite.
Well, we're, like I said before, we're breeding the underclass, and we've got to stop that. We've got to get back to independent productivity and self-discipline, role modeling, all these things that we gave away when we adopted the new morality.
I think that morally, I think it's up to the government on a moral aspect to do something about it. I'm a small businessman here in Eau Claire, and I see a lot of people on welfare that have absolutely no business being on welfare, mm-hmm. and it's people like me and you that have to pay for that. Big point that I had was when they started recycling. I think that's the best thing they could do. That's great. We need recycling. But why, instead of spending all the money about going the way they did it, why didn't they just build a great big pole barn out by the city dump, put conveyor belts out there, and let these people that can work but sit home on welfare go out there and sort through them garbage bags? I think after a couple days of sorting through dirty diapers, they'd get kind of sick of it.
I'm solidly behind the governor's workfare and learnfare programs. I think that's a step in the right direction.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Need more education, for one thing.
I have a lot of heart for people in difficult circumstances, not of their own making. But I don't think we can have patience with people that pursue that lifestyle.
No, I agree with you. I mean, there is a need for welfare. There are definitely people out there that have families, and everybody has had hard times one time or another, and it's out there for people to use when they need it. But the point I'm making is there's too many people, over 50%, I would think, that don't need it.
You know, you remind me of one fallacy. We keep confusing poverty with morality. and that's not valid. I grew up in the Depression,
Right.
and we had poverty that wouldn't end. But you never saw more high-level morality in the country than you did then.
Right.
Crime was at a low ebb with all the frustrations and the need for resources. Crime was very low. And today, when people have luxury, crime is way up and rising.
Well, thank you.
Well, thanks, Paul.
Thank you, caller.
You know, I call it the American Dream Index.
Mhm.
In our American Dream Index, the thermometer on it is low right now. Should be way up here. We've had 30 years of the Great Society programs, and we've got more poverty now than we did 30 years ago.
And we've been dumping billions and billions of dollars in the wrong place, Chuck.
And the American Dream is still out of the grasp of millions of people.
Yeah, yeah.
And the American Dream is basically a house, a
And-
car, a
and
good
they've-
job.
They've lost the formula on how to get into it.
I know, now it's $4 and $5, $6 an hour jobs. And,
We've thrown it away, yeah.
but I think, personally, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think the flood of millions and millions of illegal refugees has taken away a certain amount of that poverty money that was for Americans. It's went to foreigners.
Well, we've been suckered, Chuck. I remember the Cuban situation where Castro rounded up all his convicts and shipped them in the name of refugees.
We had one of them right here in town that murdered a woman.
So here you go. Now, how many other times can we endure that sort of thing?
Okay.
And,
You know, the Reader's Digest had an article on that where they tracked a lot of these Cuban...
From Cuba with Love. Yeah, I remember that
Yeah,
article.
and a lot of them ended up murdering people, just
Yeah.
a reign of terror
Yeah.
all across the United
Yeah,
States.
it was.
But we got them backed up here again, so we better take some more calls. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
I got a question for your guest there.
All right.
A little bit ago, he mentioned that one of his problems with the liberals was that they wouldn't discuss the moral issue. But I noticed when that lovely young lady called and wanted to discuss something as simple as hemp, that he refused to discuss it. In fact, inferred that maybe that people should be hung for smoking it. I'm of Chuck's generation, and you, sir, your generation is not going to be the savior of the Republican Party. It's going to be the ruination of it. You know, my entire life I've heard people of your generation, you know, expound on what everyone else's morals should be. Yet, you know, look at this planet that your generation from the Depression raped and ruined. And then, like I said, this lovely young lady calls up and has a very nice discussion about something that she's real concerned about. My children all use marijuana, and I don't think that they should be hung.
Thanks, Don, but you misunderstood.
Okay, thanks for
I
the
did
call.
I did not suggest that they be hung. I said that a good use for hemp was to control crime. It had no relation to what they do with marijuana.
Now, I do notice on your brochure here that you talk about building a grassroots organization.
Right.
Now, that's a slang term for marijuana.
Yes. Well, excuse the expression.
Okay.
I really don't want cannabis to get involved here.
Well, that was just
Yeah.
something to lighten up things around here, because
Yeah.
that was a pretty serious call.
Right, right.
Okay, we'll try and take another... Whoa! I guess we're on the wrong line there. Well, we'll get them in here in a second. Okay, speaking of the 1930s, on this date in 1934, 300 million tons of topsoil was blown away in a severe dust storm, and it caused the abandonment of hundreds of farms across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Colorado. That was the beginning of the Dust Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Wiped out lots of farmers. Hopefully we don't have a Dust Bowl going on here in Wisconsin that's going to wipe out the farmers.
Hopefully they're using agricultural practices that'll prevent that.
Okay, where you at on BGH? Monsanto's got a lot of money to spread around, and they've done spreading around to congressmen, state legislators.
The jury's out, but the current law is permitting labeling, and I support that.
Okay. Do you think the milk should be more expensive? Just, I mean,
Something awful is happening there because the farmers aren't getting it. The farmers should get more of the fruits of their labors, and it shouldn't be just gamesmanship up through the hierarchy of commerce.
Okay.
I don't understand why they would charge more for doing less.
I know. It's like there was an article in the Leader Telegram that they flipped it upside down.
Yeah.
The milk without BGH is costing 20 cents more a gallon than the milk with BGH.
Yeah.
And the BGH milk costs more to produce because the farmer's got to buy the chemical.
I wonder if there are that many farmers using it.
There isn't. It's been a fiasco. Something like 80% of the farmers have rejected it. 80-90% of the people don't want the stuff.
I talked to one very large farmer who said that using BGH would mean $14,000 more a year for him. Now, I understand that for a very large farmer, but I don't think that applies across the board at all.
Okay, I think we're going to try and take a call here. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, comments about the welfare reform that you were speaking of, and that is, it seems to me that the government would rather have many people on welfare to keep the percentage of the population in poverty, so that the top elite could continue to have the portion of money that they have accumulated throughout the 80s.
Well, the welfare can become an opiate of the masses, can't it?
It certainly can.
It seems like a trap to me.
But I don't want to be that cynical.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do need a safety net, though, Don.
Yeah, we do.
Right. Well, particularly to protect the women and the children, as nature would have it.
Mm-hmm.
Being that I think that women are superior to men, and if they were running this world, we wouldn't be fighting and killing each other. We'd be sitting down and communicating and talking out our problems.
You are so right. So very right. But we're back to family, and it takes two parents to do a good job on the family, and unfortunately our economy has become adjusted to the two breadwinner family, so they all have to get out to hustle in order to feed them.
And it's speeded up the destruction of the family.
Somewhere we have to get back to rationality where we can do parenting.
Seems like there's an awful lot of children that are a lot better off without drunken, abusive fathers who bring down the morale of the child.
We're back to moral responsibility, what we've been talking about. See, this doesn't have to be. This is a reaction to what our social condition is, and it's a closed loop. It's a self-perpetuating system. And until we can get back to our basic values and moral responsibility, this is where we go.
So what would your suggestion be for getting back to that? I mean, I would think it would be loving your children first and foremost.
Yeah, but the parent is cut adrift. We've been teaching New Age mentality in the schools for a long time.
You mean such as DARE?
No longer do we even get accurate history of the foundations of our country.
Oh, well, that's true because it's from a white male perspective, and the truth doesn't want to be told. Because then the children would see how stupid the past generations have been.
Well, that's a point of view, but that's where our values went, and that's why we're in the problem we have, and that's why these men become rogues in the street.
Well, things will always be the same unless they change. And, I mean, sometimes you have to go through turmoil periods to get to that, over those spots and proceed with the evolutionary process.
But if you've seen a society in collapse, it's nothing that you want to go through.
So would you think
the
that
last time it took 2,000 years to get what we have.
Oh, okay. So you're thinking from a biblical perspective then.
Certainly.
I see.
That's our foundations.
Okay. Well, I think that my beliefs probably do differ a bit from yours.
I think a lot of us are agreeing, though, that our society is in chaos and there is a meltdown going on. No matter what perspective you look at it from, we've got to change some of the things we're doing.
What we've been doing is wrong, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you think about it, there are a lot of men that feel trapped in low-paying jobs. So another opiate of the masses is alcohol. We've got plenty of bars in Wisconsin for them to go get drunk at, and then they come home and beat their wives.
Society is out of control. Look at the street crime. If the male no longer has a role in society that's honorable, he's a rogue in the street.
Well, you can look at the African Americans. In some spots, it's 40-50% unemployment.
Yeah.
They're on street corners.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do but deal drugs
Yeah.
or whatever they're doing. But the family is in a meltdown situation.
We've let it go, and we have to stop it somewhere.
Okay, let's try and take another caller. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Thanks. Hey, I'm sorry, I wasn't watching all your program. I just got home and I tuned it in. I've watched it before. I'd like to make a comment, if I may, and then like your opinion on this gun control thing. I really firmly believe that the people of our state and of our country and of our union are just thoroughly fed up, sick and tired of what's going on. I think one day we're going to see it, and I hope I'm wrong, that there's going to be a march on Madison, Wisconsin. There's going to be a march on Washington, D.C., and they're just going to say, enough is enough. We have had it.
What do you mean as far as with what? Too many guns or not enough guns or?
Taxation, the way this country is being run, the people have to have guns, and they're just going to march and they're going to take over the government. They're going to have to do something.
Well, some people say that we're headed for a Bosnia here in the United States.
Strangely enough, it's the liberals that are saying that, and they don't realize that they're the ones that are bringing it on.
Yeah, well, this is true, and you know, like on the state level and on the federal level, if Clinton wants something passed, he goes and he greases somebody's palm. He says, "I got a little brown paper bag with $25,000 cash in it," and all of a sudden, an honest man is turning into a dishonest man.
Yeah.
These legislatures, these representatives, and it's happening in both levels. And then we wonder what's wrong with our country. That's what's wrong with our country.
I don't know those things, but there's an awful lot of very, very bad policy
Well,
that we're trying to cope with.
We've created an elitist class out there that the Congress and the House and the Senate.
Time for term limits.
We created an elitist group, a very small group of mostly white men who have all these perks, and they're basically out of touch with reality.
Yeah.
A lot of them have never had a decent job where they got their fingernails done.
An awful lot of them come right out of college, go to some elective office in the state, and shoot up into Congress.
So what are you going to do about all these perks and stuff? This man says he's fed up with sending the taxes one way to Washington.
Let me approach that in a little different way. You know, when I first thought of doing this, I thought that my age would be a disadvantage. I'm finding that it's an advantage because I've already had a satisfying career. I don't need another career. And so all of the compromising factors that might pertain to someone who's struggling up the ladder are not there. The only reason I have to go to Washington, if I'm so fortunate as to do this, is to help solve these problems.
Well, they're massive, and we've got time for one more call, and then we're going to have to get out of here because it's almost 10 o'clock, and people are itching to turn on Channel 13. We hold them captive here right to 10 o'clock. Go ahead. Whoop. I guess we lost that one.
We wore them out, Chuck.
Yeah, I think they're on there right now. They're getting ready to. They're on the other line. Okay. As usual. Okay, Don, you got a phone number where people can get a hold of you if they want to start working your campaign, or
you bet.
What's
my home number is 836-9623.
all right.
And that's
Yeah.
the only number I have. But I have a box number for the campaign, and I should mention, Chuck, if I may, that this Thursday we're having a rally
all right.
out at the Gateway Inn that used to be the Holiday Inn on Claremont, 7:30, May 12th, and we have a former city council person who has spent the last year or so in Russia, and he's in a position to understand very well where they've been and maybe where we're going if we don't turn things around. So come out to hear him, and you can grill me and ask questions and find out just where I am on these issues.
Okay, I want to thank you, Don. This is Donald Brill. I want to thank you for being on the program tonight. And we'll see you viewers once again right here on the Cow Report on Cable Channel 11 next Monday at 2 p.m. And I want to thank you for tuning in.
Thank
And
you,
we'll-
Chuck, and thank you, Forrest.
All right, good evening.
Well, thank you, Chuck. That was fun.
Did you like it? Yeah. We're a little concerned, the only thing is you kept moving out of the camera.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, you were kind of, you were
I
sliding.
leaned back.
Yeah, and then your
Yeah.
chair would slide a little bit.
Why, sure.
So if you do it again, you might, if you're on camera, you might do
You
that.
bet. I appreciate those tips. I didn't know I was lousing it up.
Oh, no, you didn't want that. Well, that's why I came out messing around with the camera a little bit. You were getting off the edge of the camera.
Dave is going to be a professional.
I thought I told you I wanted my name off the credits, Chuck. They just roll.
Cliff, I haven't had time.
You haven't had time.
No, I'm not going to get in an argument with you.
No, you're not.
All
I'm
right.
keeping this tape.
No, you're not. That's my property.
No, I'm used to falling off the edge.
No.
problem. Not the first time.
Yeah, okay, I just don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Like you do more of them.
Sure. Yeah, I haven't been on camera for years.
He is really good.
Yeah, he's on camera. Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Chuck, and
Yeah.
I hope there's not a problem with that tape.
Oops, you got to take your mic.
Wait a few layers.